Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor Lawyer. While she's pulling up the presentation, how many people here are time optimists? You think you get far more done than they actually can? How many people think they do time management? How many people, when I say time management, mean they actually keep a task list and they're not actually doing time management? So most people, when they think about time management, they think task management. And task management and time management are different. Today, I'm going to teach you about my application, Day Optimizer, which is a time management application, and talk about my search for finding a co-founder for this business. So we'll see if the clicker works. So what is Day Optimizer? So you saw in the presentation, a Day Optimizer is a mobile and desktop web app for creating daily plans that reflect your priorities using guided workflows based on neuroscience principles. So we'll go through each of those and tell you a little bit more about what that means. So Day Optimizer has 3 different ways for you to plan your day. You can create a commitment list, a time bucket, or a daily schedule. People who are using day planners are familiar with doing a daily schedule. You kind of build it all out in there. We allow you to create lesser type plans that still help you account for, try to keep focus in your day, or try to account for how much time things take. I recommend people start with the commitment list if you've never actually done this before, just because it helps you focus. A lot of people work off their master task list, and that's very distracting throughout the day. Moving up to a time bucket allows you to then start saying, I'm going to spend an hour of this, 2 hours here, etc. And that actually gives you a sense of how long things take. And when you do that, you'll find out you have far less time in the day than you actually do. And then you can build a whole schedule. The reason you have these different plans, though, is they help you kind of plan your day differently depending upon your energy and stress levels and the structure of your day. So it's useful to not always be building a full daily plan. Sometimes you just want to do a commitment list. There we go. So the workflow that Day Optimizer presents is this 3-step workflow: commit, allocate, and schedule. And at the commit phase, what you're doing is you're looking at your master task list of everything you need to do today, your tasks, your appointments, and your daily activities. And so we usually keep those in 3 separate places: a task list or a calendar. And most people don't account for their daily activities. So eating lunch takes up time in your day. Exercising takes up time in your day. You don't put that on your list, you think you have more time in your day than you actually do. So that's important to do. So commit to what you're going to do today, and then put aside all the rest so you're not even looking at it so you can't get distracted. Then allocate time to each of those things, saying I'm going to spend an hour or 2 hours here. Difference between time allocation and time estimation is how long it takes to get something done. Allocation is how long you're going to spend on it today. And a lot of tasks that we do that are novel or complex, we can't estimate accurately. So instead, we have to allocate time to make progress each day on that. And that's an important concept. And the final thing is to schedule things based upon your energy, your appointments in the day, etc. So that's the basic workflow. Depending upon which plan you take, you'll go through the different steps in this workflow. I won't explain the neuroscience in this presentation, but it's based on real principles. Let's see, next. There we go. It's touchy, isn't it? There we go. No, that's jumped. One more. There we go. So the next thing that Day Optimizer provides is a task flow. And this is the concept that you're going to be doing tasks. You're not going to finish a task in a single day. So you're going to have to do it over multiple days. Most task managers, when you check it off, it disappears. In Day Optimizer, you use 2 ways to check off the list: done today versus done forever. Done today means I finished working on it today. Scratch it off the list, get that nice little dopamine hit, and move on. It appears in your planning flow the next day. Done forever, it gets removed entirely. So this allows you to check things off your list every single day, getting that motivation boost without losing it. You can also see we have skip today, won't do, snooze, different ways to manage that task flow, basically. There we go. The other thing that Day Optimizer provides is real time. This is the thing, most of the stuff you can do with the day planner, but in this, the real time stuff you can't really do. It actually will figure out what you've checked off today and tell you how much time you have remaining and are you ahead or behind your schedule so you can make adjustments. You know, and it provides a visualization. It's hard, a little bit hard to see on this slide, but here this part is all gray. That means I'm not going to be able to get to it. I'm underwater. So that process email in the afternoon, I'm not going to get to. So that's an example of a time bucket where I drag and drop. It's a prioritized list, and the water fills up. When you check things off, it drops to the bottom. And so you immediately see what I can get to do today and what I can't do today as the thing progresses over the day. Okay, so that's Day Optimizer. So let's talk about why I'm looking for a co-founder. So I've been doing Day Optimizer part-time for a couple years now. I realized last year I was teaching dance in Berlin, and I worked with a partner over there, and I got to work on a lot of the curriculum, and she was handling a lot of the business side. And that really showed me what the pleasure it is to work with a really working partnership. And I realized that's what I really need for Day Optimizer. I need to be focusing on the product while someone else is working on the marketing and the customer success side. The other thing is I start looking and saying, where do I want to be in 5 years if Day Optimizer is successful? And if Day Optimizer is successful, I'm going to have a team of people. And I suck at management. And I hate management. I've worked at it for years. I'm much better than I was. But Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot, basically, when they started HubSpot, said, I will have no direct reports because it's inefficient for me to get better at management. I could spend 4 to 5 years to get better and still just be mediocre. And that's the same with me. It's much better for me to focus on the product side and have someone else building the business. So that's what I've been looking for. The other thing is someone, Obi was asking me earlier, why is a co-founder if you've already started? And the reason there is that there's a distinction between an agent and a steward, right? Someone who's an employee gets told what to do and you can give them some responsibility, but they don't have that ownership. They don't have that stewardship of the business. So bringing someone on as a co-founder is a completely different role there. Plus, they're going to get significant equity. And then, yeah, I'm focusing on my strengths. Okay, what makes a good co-founder? So I did a lot of research on what makes a good co-founder. A lot of people try to co-found with friends. You'll notice friends and family are actually the worst people to found a business with. According to the research, your friends might be great, your family might be great. Really, it's former coworkers, people you've had a professional relationship with before, you've worked with before in the past. The second is strangers. People think, oh, it's much better for me to work with someone I know than someone I don't. But here you have all these social relationships that don't translate to professional relationships, and you make all these assumptions in those relationships that make you not talk about issues until it's too late. With strangers, you're less likely to do that. So I'm actually going the stranger route, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you're looking for diverse roles. Like I'm a product guy, I'm looking for someone who can do the marketing side and the management side, showing up my weaknesses, but similar approaches. So they say you want diverse hard skills, similar soft skills. So you want the same ethics, the same risk tolerance, the same goals at the end. And then an interesting thing, I interviewed this, I forget his name now, Dr. Matt from Co-Founder Clarity, and he said that the key thing is the capacity for friendship. You don't necessarily want to be friends, found someone with a friend, but you want to be able to be friends with that person, right? You want to like. Okay, so my process, so most people, when they look for a co-founder, do it haphazardly. You know, I decided I'm going to be spending 5,000 to 10,000 hours with this person, spending 100 to 200 hours. Finding the person is reasonable. So I created this 6-step process for finding a co-founder that I just want to bring you through real quick. Oops. Yeah. One more. Okay. So the first thing is to prepare. I used a launch strategy, and the launch strategy is where I'm going to go out there and try to get as many people into the funnel as quickly as possible. There's something called a conveyor belt decision, and that's what this is. So figuring out exactly who I was looking for, creating the assets for that, identifying the channels, you can see all that. What that resulted in is this landing page, where I'm describing who I am, who I'm looking for, what the product is, what the business opportunity is, and then some other questions. And I funneled everyone into this page, and from there, they can schedule a call. So I've so far talked to probably 30 people, 25 to 30 people on this journey. You'll see in a second, I have one person who is actually now in my vetting phase. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So two things you want to do is search and attract. So you want to get something out there. You want to actively go and search for people and contact people, but you also want to have something like this, some way that you can attract people, and so that you can be specific. Saying, hey, I'm looking for a co-founder is useless. What type of co-founder are you looking for? What are your goals? All that. So that's the point of the landing page. It tells someone exactly what I'm looking for, so people can make referrals. People can say, hey, this person is looking for, a part-time marketing co-founder with blah, blah, blah. It's also useful because a lot of these other sites, they don't really let you get deep into what a co-founder search is. So I've been able to, I use social media, I went through all these different things. To qualify, quick. Yeah, let's just do it. Go to qualify, go back one. So qualify, just have an introductory call with them, then we have a diving deeper call. The point of this, talk to everyone so you can calibrate your criteria, because it really is not just a rational thing, it's a gut thing. So you have to talk to people and figure out what makes a good co-founder for you. And you're looking at this stage, not looking for a perfect fit, but rough fit. Next slide. Then there's the vetting phase where you want to test. So we just went to a startup weekend 2 weekends ago. Me and this potential co-founder to test a high-stress situation where we both had skin in the game, we were trying to win something. And so we got to see how each other actually interacted and how we worked together. And we got to test each other's competence because we were trying to build a business over the weekend. It was great. But then we're also going to go through verification, so going through reference checks, third-party interviews. We also have 70 questions we're going through and answering. And each call, we basically have written them up in a Google Docs, typed our answers, and then each call we go through 5 of them and say like, okay, let's talk about these. Let's understand each other better. So we're doing basically accelerating that relationship development to build swift trust and respect. So people think trust takes a long time to build. There's a whole model called Swift Trust that lets you build trust very quickly. Next slide. The partnering side, equity split, we're going to use a model called slicing pie model, which is a dynamic equity model. If you're founding a business, do not use a static equity split. That is a recipe for disaster. All the research says that. You should use a dynamic equity split. You don't have to use slicing pie, but use some sort of dynamic equity split. Read Noam Wasserman's The Founder's Dilemmas to learn all about why you shouldn't use static equity splits. But don't go, it's 30-70. So what we're going to do, we're going to be tracking our time, and that will actually determine every month our equity in the business will be changing. That's how slicing pie works. We're also determining what our roles and decisions are. Usual manuals, the blueprint of we that tells you how you interact with each other and how do you interact when you're fighting, how do you support each other when you're down, et cetera, et cetera. We're working through the divorce process up front, and that will go into the co-founder agreement. Next slide. And then we also have been talking already about doing regular check-ins and how to nurture the relationship after the ink is dried on our contract. We then have a relationship we need to maintain. So doing quarterly reviews with each other, saying how are we going against each other, where we just check in and we have a regular process where we are bringing issues to each other. And Matt, the potential co-founder I'm working with, has said every single time we meet, we should have some issue to discuss. So that way we get used to discussing issues with each other and refining a relationship. And there are there's a new industry on co-founder coaches that are basically like a marriage counselor, but And I think that's it. Next slide. Yep, that's it. So I'm Trevor Lawbear. You can contact me at trevor@theoptimizer.com or on Twitter @fastfedora, and we can open it up for questions.
Thank you, Trevor. That was fantastic. And I actually would like to ask the first question, just to be totally. Oh wait, we do have an obligatory question to ask. What are you really asking for help with today? And it sounds like co-founder is what you're looking for, but for this group specifically.
Yeah. So when I scheduled this presentation, I wasn't as far as along, and so I was going to be asking, hey, do you have any recommendation for a co-founder? I now have someone late stage in the process, so I'm not actually looking for that. But I always keep asking, what have I missed in the process? How can I go through this process better and make my co-founder process more successful?
I'm going to jump the line and just ask, how long have you been working on this specific process, this journey of finding a co-founder?
I started this in, I think, like mid-January, and then I launched. It took about, I think it took about 4 to 6 weeks to develop everything, to do all the research before I did the launch process. And then I started interviewing people. When the first couple of days, it was silence, crickets, and then all of a sudden I started to meet people. And yeah, so since mid-January.
If you just want to raise your hand if you have a question, I'll bring you the mic.
Hi, thanks, Trevor. I'm Zen Honeycutt, and I have a question. Well, actually, some feedback too. So I love the do logo with the check mark and the list in it. I would also love to see done, like add an NE on the bottom. I mean, maybe that's like a place you get to, but that's that concept would be appealing to me. I'm not clear if the product is available, if it's actually, if the app is up and we can use it and try it. Did you say that? Did I miss it?
Yeah, yes, it is available. Yeah.
Okay, is it on Android or?
So it's a web app, so you'll have to go to theoptimizer.com and you can register from there, and then there's instructions on how to install it on your phone.
So it's also a mobile app?
It's also a mobile app, but it won't be available through the App Store. What you'll do is you'll go and install it on your phone.
Okay, but it works the same on your mobile phone as on the web. Like it's optimized for it.
Yeah. It looks like once you install it, it looks like any other web app. Or sorry, any other mobile app.
Okay.
So yeah, the app on what you see on the desktop is a desktop interface. When you install it on your phone, you get a mobile interface.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just some thoughts on the landing page that you have. I personally would lead with what the app is and see an image of the app and how you can use it, and then have like underneath that the information about you and connecting. Like I would enroll people with the the appeal of the app itself and how it works, because it looks awesome. So I'd like to see more of that on the landing pages. Just for my feedback on that.
One point, to be clear, that was my co-founder landing page.
That was a co-founder. Okay.
Yeah, that was not the product landing page. It looks completely different. That was specifically for finding a co-founder.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. And then the other thing is this whole process with finding a co-founder. Where did you get this? Is this like something that you found or you made up? Because I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that could be a service or a product for business owners everywhere.
So this is something I developed based on research I did. There was someone else on First Round who had kind of developed a similar type process, but not as formalized. So I basically created my steps and kind of put that together. And I have, well, open sourced it in there's a Notion document. So if you email me, I will send you a link to that. That actually has the whole process laid out. I didn't update all my notes in there, so it's still on my list to kind of finish updating that document, but I do have a document laid out that has all the steps for people.
I just think that there's a lot of value in that. That could be a service or product.
Yeah, a very impressive process you've come up with to find this co-founder. I'm curious, what worked best in terms of actually finding candidates? What kind of channels?
So the dating sites did wind up being a good source. So I got a bunch of people. I've had some people from Y Combinator and StartHawk. StartHawk has been better for me. Y Combinator dating service tends to have a lot of junior people. And also Y Combinator, I don't really like their interface. They combine sales and marketing, which are two completely different disciplines. So I would constantly see all these salespeople who are like, hey, I can go and make calls. I'm like, I'm looking for a marketer. And so it was a frustrating experience to use the Y Combinator site, but StartHawk is actually where I get a lot of my candidates from. But the candidate who actually is in my pipeline came from a newsletter I don't subscribe to. I have no clue. So that's where that landing page worked. Is I put it out there. Someone saw that, added it into their newsletter, and that's how I found this candidate that I'm working with. So, but yeah, I have a Trello board with a whole kind of sales pipeline stage. I've reached out to them, they've reached out to me, we've had a call, et cetera, and I move them through the pipeline, and I actually am tracking where they came from, so that way I'll be at the end report on that.
Thanks, Trevor, for that really great process for the co-founder. I'm curious, specifically related to the product, how does the interface work with already established calendars? Because right now my life is running off of 2 separate ones. And so is there a requirement of dragging and dropping, or do I have to create separate entries, or how does that really work when there's a work calendar and a personal calendar, and how does that all tie in together?
Yeah, so this is, it will sync with your calendars. It is not meant to be used as a calendar. So if you're the type of person who looks at your calendar to plan your day, then Day Optimizer won't work for you. Day Optimizer is more if you're the idea of, oh, I have a day planner, and I'm actually seeing every single thing that I do, and I'm pulling my appointments from the day calendar in. But we sync from multiple different calendars. So if you have like 3, 4, or 5 calendars, it doesn't matter. We'll sync, pull them all together, and then it shows your appointments. And the key thing I will point out is when you're planning your day, your appointments are not your time. So there's appointments on your calendar that you won't go to, and there's appointments on your calendar that require more time than you put on your calendar. So if you put a doctor's appointment from 1 to 2, you have travel time there, travel time back. You have a webinar, you need to prep for it, you need to wrap it up. So even in Day Optimizer, when you add an appointment to your calendar, that next stage, the allocate stage, it might be an hour, then you allocate an hour and a half for that appointment. So that's a little bit of a distinction there. So then it will create that daily agenda that will have an hour and a half block for that hour appointment.
Thank you very much, Trevor, for your presentation. I can tell you're very much a process oriented person. Encourages a nerd like me to see that going more into the marketplace like that. I did have a couple of practical questions from like a team building perspective on it. A couple of things I didn't think I quite grasped or saw. There was like a specific outline of like clear values, but also like from a team building perspective, do you have any thoughts about maybe having more than just like a quarterly check-in? Just from my experience and perspective with like working with teams, normally it's helpful to at least have a daily, if not a weekly check-in, and then like have like a quarterly strategy and tactical kind of get together.
Yeah, so to clarify that quarterly check-in was specifically about a relationship and taking time to work on any issues in our relationship. There are also like, we are actually have a weekly meeting that lasts 2 to 3 hours right now. And we're going to be doing, I'm going to be flying, he lives in Minneapolis, flying up there like in the next 2 weeks to kind of do like a 4-day intensive. So we are doing those as well, but this is specifically to maintain the relationship, because I think the thing is people do so many business meetings and they forget to focus on the relationship. I forgot your first question.
First question was just like with working with teams, I've always found it clarity clears up and prevents a lot of things. I didn't necessarily see a specific outline of what your positional or from the values were in there that you're looking for.
Yeah, so if you went to the landing page, and anyone who wants to see that landing page, you can go to dayoptimizer/co-founder, and that's where that landing page is. It actually includes my values in there, and then we have been talking as what are going to be our corporate values with him. And the idea is he's going to take over management and building the team, but we're working together on those values. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. That was a great presentation. I'm a solopreneur. You probably know that the #1 reason companies fail is because of co-founder issues.
Yep.
So I just wanted to hear more about how you mentioned that the reason you're bringing in a co-founder rather than like a manager or an employee is that investment, that like emotional investment factor, I think. So I'm wondering how how you think someone would be emotionally invested if it wasn't their idea with you. And what's the difference there in your mind about like how to ensure they're just as invested in this success as you are since it was your idea?
So yes, I think one of the reasons I did this process so detailed is because of all the co-founder issues, because I know that people pick co-founders haphazardly. I've had co-founders in the past that weren't an optimal match for the business. And so I wanted to really go through a formalized process to try to find the right co-founder for my business. As far as the idea, in almost any startup, there's only one person with the idea, right? There's very rarely do two people come up with the same idea and are founding together. So there's always that imbalance there anyway. But what I'm doing is giving him that stewardship of that. So he's taking over right now. He's reaching out to customers, finding out what they like about the product. He actively uses this to plan his day-to-day, which is one of the reasons that I'm moving forward with him. Some of the other people, they tried it out. They're like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I can help you market it, blah, blah, blah. This guy actually started using it and he's using it to plan his day every day and is fully 100% invested in that. So I don't know how you find that other than you go out and you talk to a whole bunch of different people and you have a formalized process to compare, you know.
So you talked about the dynamic equity share as being really based on time commitment. I'm curious, do you perceive any issues with impact? And somebody saying that, wow, what I just did, my work, created a larger impact economically or for the growth that would require more equity?
Yeah, so Mike Moyer who wrote Slicing Pie brings up this fact is impact is a hindsight thing, right? And you have to assign equity before that, right? You can't wait until the business is sold and say, okay, now we're going to divide up the equity, right? Based upon the impact. So the fair way to do it is to say, what are the inputs, not what are the outputs, and divide the equity based on the inputs. Now, the slicing pie isn't the only dynamic equity model out there. Like you can do, 4 years of vesting based on time sort of things, and where the equity is based upon how much they work. Just don't give up, 30, 50, or whatever equity up front so someone owns the equity immediately. But I do believe in the slicing pie model.
Just a follow-up on that. What if somebody joins as a co-founder and they make a 2-minute phone call, but they have 30 years of experience with, a certain area? Do they get to count any extra time or those connections and relationships and experience?
So the slicing pie model does account for relationships. As far as the differences in experience, is we each will have a rate that we're earning the equity. So we're not necessarily always earning the equity at the same rate. So, like I've been doing, this is my 4th startup. If I'm founding with like someone who's 20, we're going to have different rates that we're earning that equity at. Just like if we were actually in the company, we have different salaries that we'd be getting paid. But that kind of relationship thing, and how that works is you set up something to where I'm not entirely clear on this, but basically like does that relationship turn into something? And if it does, then that earns equity. But it's not just like, oh, I've got relationships, I automatically get equity for those relationships. Those relationships have to actually do something for the business. And then it creates equity.
Thanks, Trevor. I'm so excited about your app. I can't wait to try it. It has features in it that I'm looking for. I do project management and I work really closely with the founder of a business. And there are things that are part of your app that are like, oh, that's the thing that we've been missing. So one question I have is I like the allocation piece of it because I currently, I schedule blocks on his calendar to do things, and then like he, feels like doing one thing or another and lose track of, the allocation piece. So I love that you can just say, okay, we're going to block time out for this thing. Do you have plans to also incorporate time tracking against that?
A lot later.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now I'm focusing on what are the key things that the optimizer brings to the table that the other apps don't. But part of this co-founder thing is that the product development has been so slow because I'll spend a month or 2 on marketing, a month or 2 recording customer success videos, then jump back to the product. So the product is just, it goes forward a little bit, then pauses for a couple months. It goes forward. So having this co-founder will let me work more actively, consistently on the
And then just one more thing, I totally agree. I want to second what Ben said about there's so much value in the process you've developed for finding a co-founder. Again, I work with somebody who could really use that, and so I'll email you more.
Yeah, please email. And if anyone wants to like work with me and turn this into like a real process, I'm happy to do that. I just don't have the bandwidth to someone said, hey, you could write a book on this. It's like, yeah, I probably could, but I don't have the bandwidth right now to do that. But I've been documenting the process so others can use it.
Well, now I just be adding to what two other people said. I've had several clients who are looking for co-founders, and I'm glad you mentioned Y Combinator, because that's a common place to engage, and I wanted to understand why you didn't go that route. So I'll say next, I want to make sure it's a positive statement. As a hiring manager, I tell both people doing the hiring and people writing the resume should attract the kind of people you want to work with, and equally discourage the kind of people that wouldn't work out. So I think your process appears to reflect your personality really well. And I'll tell you candidly, a couple of points I'm like, yeah, no, that's not for me. And I think it's good, right? Assuming that we could be very positive about each other and still not be the right match. So I wanted to compliment that part of the process, that I think a lot of your personality came through.
Great, thank you. And I'll mention that was a conscious thing. I was consciously actually trying to filter people through the webpage, through there, saying like, if you didn't, somewhere in there I say, if you don't like the way I think, then you're not going to be a good co-founder.
Listening to your presentation, your app, and the color of your background over there made me think of like resources you might be able to give folks that are thinking about using your app. And one of the books that came to mind was the book Eat That Frog. And that might be a great partnership for folks who are trying. Someone struggling with using your app, having like resources for helping them learn how to think in a way like yours, of like allocating time, or just like I don't have to get everything done today, but I have to make a small bit of progress. That is helping folks like be able to that don't normally think in that process.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the key reasons why I finally said I need to go co-founder, is because I need to do those partnerships, and I need to do something called education-based marketing to teach people the process before they even use the app. Even if they, in Dan Martell's Growth Accelerator program, and he says your marketing should help far more people than your product ever does. And so we're going to focus a lot on that education-based marketing. How do I help people? But that requires reaching out to people and doing all this like really extroverted, outgoing stuff, which is not me. So the guy I found, he loves that stuff. I hate that. So that's exactly, it finally came down to like, for me to make this successful, I think partnerships are going to be critical, and I'm not the right person to build out those partnerships. So that's what I was looking for that company.
So Trevor, I appreciate your presentation. As someone who's like super detail oriented and uses my schedule not this optimally, I really appreciated seeing all that. I think if I could like fully buy into the tool, the process, then I think it can be super useful. So my question, that being, you mentioned competitors, and I was just curious what you on the product side think yours does differently or better.
I think, well, like some of the main things is that it's actually a workflow-based process. So we've actually switched from being, in the 90s, we had a lot of workflow-based software, and then we moved over to these freeform UI interfaces. And I believe the pendulum's swinging back a little bit more to workflow. Like if you look at Hey for email from Basecamp, that's a workflow-based email product. It's not a freeform in the same way. So the workflow is one, and then just features like Done Today versus Done Forever, which look like they're simple, but require a whole separate level of data structure and all that to implement, that is not easy for other people to implement. So that whole concept of a task flow is something that is unique today.
Yeah, on my notepads, I have like a slash for I've done this for today, then an X for I've done it forever. So that's great. Anyone else?
I actually had another question, Trevor, as well. You mentioned at one point in the presentation that you did a weekend sort of a mock problem solving or some kind of a product launch or something. I was curious to know, you seem like a very analytical person. So for one, I'd love to understand how if that's a game, you actually think it's indicative of a real world experience, because obviously you do, and I'm sure there's a way to do that. So I'd be curious to know how that, how do you think that, what is that? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so that's the Techstars Startup Weekend. We used to do them here in Asheville. We did them for 2 or 3 years in a row here. It is basically where you build a startup over a course of the weekend. You start on Friday night, people do pitches, and then they form teams, and then they have to build a startup by Sunday, and they do a presentation on Sunday. So it's a great opportunity for you to explore, is the co-founder really a co-founder? What do they look like in an actual startup situation, right? And so, and it's also high stress. You're not getting much sleep. You're trying to win the competition. So you've got skin in the game. It's a really great place to do that. So our team was actually won the competition. It was Tongo Toys. So we actually joined a team where she had this kind of stuffed plush animal thing. And over the course of the weekend, we went out, did customer research, built an entire e-commerce website, like talked to different people about what are the manufacturing costs, all that. So at the end, basically had a whole business plan and a working e-commerce website to launch. You can go to tongotoys.com if you want to see that talk. But yeah, so we built that over the weekend. And so I got to see how he ran the team, because he took over the team. I ran the technical side, got to see him out doing customer research, building out the whole model, because we built a whole financial model for that. So if you are looking for a co-founder going to a startup weekend, if you can do that, I think that is an amazing way to test that relationship.
Thanks, that's fantastic. But any other questions? Well, thank you very much, man. That was a fantastic presentation.